Allow me to introduce myself.
It must be the remains of the victims of the monster that came through here. This ooze seems very familiar.
What in the world has SpongeBob come to? Being a lifelong fan of any series poses its fair share of challenges. However, our short, yellow, and spongy invertebrate has time and again proven to be in a league of his own. For better and for worse. Contrary to that staple facade portrayed on his nonsensical slapstick rind, this over 2-decade-old chunk of cheese has undergone countless transitions during his tenure. And as the years would pass, this recurring identity crisis would only contribute to the ever-growing inconsistencies found within his vast library of games. Some of the series' most memorable moments are directly tied to these changes, as well as an ever-rising sea of stinkers. Considering how far the classic Nicktoons has fallen from its glory days, I often wonder whether those seldom flickers of brilliance make a worthy compensation for all the repeated testing of a player's pain tolerance. However, it's in these such moments when a group like Purple Lamp Studios suddenly surfaces to remind us all what made SpongeBob such a remarkable childhood icon to begin with. It was actually good. Now, I can't be the only one who stumbled into a time paradox upon the Cosmic Shake's announcement. SpongeBob received an original 3D platformer in 2023, and Mrs. Puff is dressed as a marshmallow. What wonderful reality is this? Well, no matter the potential upsets that could await his hungry customers, I'll gladly take a bite out of anything our fishy fry boy dishes out. So, let's dig in.
This is about the big, the really big, the biggest picture!
Myself.
To help comprehend the sheer scope of the Cosmic Shake, I believe an analogy would be most beneficial here. Just as you'd construct a jelly sandwich, Purple Lamp spread Battle for Bikini Bottom's gameplay between Creature from the Krusty Krab and Truth or Square's world-building ideals. Sounds simple, but for those who've played these three titles, you'd understand the intense pressure involving such a task. Not only are the latter two entries on opposing ends of a spectrum of sorts, with Truth or Square being fixated on reliving the show, and Creature from the Krusty Krab being an abstract interpretation of it, but Battle for Bikini Bottom has often been regarded as the series' paragon. Competently tying all three of these together would prove to be an absurd undertaking. Yet, that's precisely what Purple Lamp did here with the Cosmic Shake. Something that should have by all means been too ambitious for its own good. And sometimes it is. Our story opens to a fairly typical day in Bikini Bottom. Spongebob and Patrick are prepping for a trip to Glove World, Squidward's being a cad, and self-driving trucks are rampaging through the streets. The normal, everyday shenanigans you've come to expect. Much like Truth or Square, the Cosmic Shake goes out of its way to spoon-feed players with this incredibly accurate and charming depiction of the show. From the very onset, there's this overwhelming emphasis placed on interacting with various townspeople, more so than was ever present with any of its predecessors. Equally as surprising are the various characters you encounter in this brief tutorial. Karen, Pearl, Spot, Ullman Jenkins? Combined with the countless Easter eggs scattered throughout, the Cosmic Shake could be best described as an extended episode on Early Impressions. However, that's only scraping the very surface of the cap. Once the boys arrive at Glove World, SpongeBob gets all melancholy over some stuck-up twerps, and these two bystanders become fish cakes, we're introduced to a mysterious peddler by the name of Madame Kassandra. Being the paragon of saints that she is, our mannerly mermaid bestows upon the pair of pinheads magical bubble soap capable of altering reality to your very dreams. Of course, our dimple dupe implicitly trusts his newfound acquaintance, and lo and behold, the wholesome wishes SpongeBob makes for his friends backfire, causing catastrophic rifts to form within the universe, and subsequently scattering much of the town and its residents across various WishWorlds. See why a Creature from the Krusty Krab comparison was made? And trust me, it only gets weirder from here on. In the aftermath of all this chaos, SpongeBob and Luma Patrick form an alliance with the Great Flavor Mage in their efforts to repair the Jellyverse. First, they must collect a sufficient amount of cosmic jelly so subtle Sandra can fashion cosmic costumes for them. Once donned, SpongeBob and his bloated balloon are able to access the outfit's corresponding WishWorld in order to locate their missing friends and any lost possessions. Okay, so for context, this was Purple Lamp's follow-up to Plankton's robots going rogue and demolishing the town. The universe is fastened together by jelly, and mermaid tears can reshape reality in the hands of the pure-hearted. Guess we'll need to overlook the foregoing Tiki Massacre. Anytime a premise deviates from what's considered standard in pursuit of a more innovative, flamboyant path, you run the risk of the series losing its core personalities somewhere along the way. However, Purple Lamp prevented that from ever occurring through one crucial action. Across the Cosmic Shake, there's a diligent adherence to what could roughly be described as an equilibrium of extremes. Basically, there's always this balance existing between its outlandish concepts and familiar ones, which enables the Cosmic Shake to elicit both a sense of novelty and nostalgia simultaneously. So let's start off by analyzing just how much the sponge breath and bubble soap has evolved upon Battle for Bikini Bottom's foundations.
Oh yeah, that's the good stuff.
Patrick, I don't even want to know.
Here, use this super velocitous momentum enhancer.
How do you know my name?
Although this was one of my most heavily anticipated titles of the year, my initial expectations for the Cosmic Shake were dubious at best. Given the trailer's incessant devotion to hooking us avid sponge geeks with all these callbacks, I had a decent hunch for what its world building would entail. However, up until release date, everything else remained a relative mystery for me. Would Purple Lamp's dive into the multiverse meet Heavy Iron's platforming legacy, or would it become this shameless, nostalgic fluff factory it apparently strove to be? Yes. Beneath those excessive layers of sponge gloss, the Cosmic Shake is precisely what Purple Lamp had intended for it to be. A proper 3D platformer harking back to those prevalent in the early to mid-2000s. After a nearly 20-year hiatus, the series finally returned to the style that made Battle for Bikini Bottom and the movie game such standouts in their era. However, while the Cosmic Shake sports several of the key characteristics of its forerunners, Purple Lamp wasn't afraid to deviate from their sources of inspiration on occasion. Demoting collectibles to a side role is an extreme example of such a case. Whereas Rehydrated was your classic hardcore collectathon, the Cosmic Shake is structured more so as a story-driven adventure. Each of the 7 levels, or WishWorlds, center themselves around a series of diverse activities which all culminate in an eventual showdown with its unique boss. Once our hero has prevailed, he'll triumphantly return to Bikini Bottom, where Madame Kassandra can equip him with the next WishWorlds cosmic costume. It's a very basic but reliable format that suits the game's direct approach. As for that side role and the main source of the game's collectibles, we're provided the optional task of retrieving gold doubloons. The doubloons are essentially a fusion between the golden spatulas and Patrick's socks, but are far more rewarding in their functionality. Generally, these can be found either hidden throughout the WishWorlds, awarded for completing various trials, or traded by NPCs for fulfilling fetch quests. If SpongeBob's acquired a sufficient amount of these coins, he'll unlock additional tiers of cosmic costumes which can be purchased with all the cosmic jelly you've mercilessly smashed out of the Wumbo Tikis. Structurally, these might all sound like overall improvements to Battle for Bikini Bottom, especially if you're the type of player who prefers dumping the dictates of some gaudy cookware in exchange for a fluid runtime. All the same, there are some less savory aspects here to consider. The Cosmic Shake is a noticeably more linear game than Rehydrated. Every WishWorld, alongside their primary objectives, are always presented in a singular fixed order. So beyond the hub world quests and searching for gold doubloons, the player's choice of progression is considerably limited all throughout. And second, while this entry swept those crummy clams and Moneybags Crabs roadblocks to the curb, it does resort to a few questionable choices for a collectathon courtesy of the WishWorld's very agenda. Therefore, despite their similarities, I don't believe the Cosmic Shake can ever be fairly evaluated on the standards of its forerunner. At least, entirely. Both have their own plot of strengths and weaknesses corresponding to their differing structures, so a substantial factor of a player's enjoyment will inevitably come down to personal preference. That said, the developer's approach here more often than not works wonders in the Cosmic Shake's favor. If there's a single skill Purple Lamp demonstrated their proficiency in, it would be level design. In spite of arranging every single task in this rigid lockstep, the WishWorlds are utterly fantastic. Whether you're scaling the rocky wilderness to strangle cacti or auditioning for a role in a karate film, each area provides players with both fresh and satisfying scenarios at every turn. Best of all, the platforming does not disappoint. While being on the slightly easier side of things, due to the gliding ability and Patrick vigilantly rescuing SpongeBob anytime you fall, the Cosmic Shake is nevertheless just as competent a 3D platformer as the prior, possibly even surpassing it at times. Not only do the layouts take full advantage of both SpongeBob's basic and expanded movesets, but they're impressively diverse and tight all throughout. If you enjoyed the platforming mechanics introduced in Heavy Iron's earlier games, then you'll feel right at home here. The Cosmic Shake feels great to play. On top of that, there's a host of new and returning activities taking the spotlight. Fetching socks, riding seahorses, surfing down slides, assaulting your cast members. Yeah, there's a literal whack-a-mole minigame where you score points for kicking people. Now, there's 2 factors I believe chiefly contribute to the WishWorld's triumphs: their rapid pace and unpredictability. Nearly every level introduces some additional mechanic, a new enemy, and an array of distinct objectives, leading to the gameplay being, for lack of better words, constantly shaken up. So even if a few of these gimmicks weren't exactly my cup of tea, the Cosmic Shake swiftly incorporates something better to compensate. Frankly, there's only a few sections I even found remotely boring, and those were a selection of the optional quests. The levels themselves, while weak in areas, are all around exceptionally built, and their outstanding enjoyability trickles down to our frenetic fry cook's enhanced controls. While your default moveset is practically the same as Rehydrated's, there's a noticeable boost in responsiveness, as well as a slight increase in run speed. Once again, if you enjoyed Battle for Bikini Bottom's moveset, then the Cosmic Shake will be right up your alley. This comfortable transition also applies to the plethora of skills he accumulates across your journey. When gliding was introduced, I had worried it would facilitate the platforming to an unhealthy degree. But that was certainly not the case. Failed to cross one of the tutorial's very first gaps. Don't laugh. At first glance, both gliding and the dodge move were peculiar inclusions to the moveset. However, I soon came to appreciate them for their numerous contributions. Like Sandy's lassoing, the gliding enables you with a greater sense of freedom, and the ability to dodge provides both an ample boost when initiating your jumps as well as contributing to the faster paced combat. But among all these new and returning abilities, the two that impressed me the most are the Bubble Throw and Karate Kick. So, the Bubble Throw operates like a more liberal version of Patrick's throw ability from Rehydrated, that can be used to press buttons, inflate platforms, and temporarily stun enemies, the latter of which comes in very handy when engaging hordes of foes. Then there's the Karate Kick, one of the most game-changing, overpowered abilities SpongeBob has ever received. Having our grounded goof transform into this ninja drone capable of pulling off crazy parkour stunts and comboing enemies back to back is such a cool concept. And an insanely broken one. This thing gives the cruise missile a run for its money. How is that even possible? Really, the only drawback this thing has is, like the Bubble Throw, its aiming prompts primarily rely on the position of your camera independent of where SpongeBob is facing, which, at first, feels awkward. However, once you've adjusted to this, these two are a blast, especially in combat scenarios. Speaking of combat, let's cover whatever these psychos are supposed to be. So, the Cosmic Shake debuts a new faction of foes called the Jellies, which are these bulbous interdimensional terrors that wreak havoc across the WishWorlds. What is the actual incentive behind the menacing Galapsagoop's actions? Is their existence solely a consequence of SpongeBob's tampering with reality? Why is Purple Lamp so fixated on plastering every one of their characters purple? Though these questions are never addressed and their mysterious origins are left to our imaginations, the Jellies did manage to leave a favorable impact on the Cosmic Shake, on top of a few stains. Similar to SpongeBob's moveset, certain members such as the Tartar Jelly and Jelly Maker are obvious callbacks to pre-existing foes, but we likewise encounter a fair share of newcomers. Personal standouts are the Ninjellies and Baby Booms, with the former providing an excellent use for the Karate Kick, and the latter being always up for a quick tennis match. Even if he stinks. While these are definitely some of the best designed enemies we've gotten from the series, I do think these wackos are inevitably a downgrade from Heavy Iron's earlier casts for several reasons. A few foes, such as the Big Jellies, have to be struck multiple times in order to be defeated. Alone, this wouldn't pose any problems, but the game frequently locks you in these mandatory skirmishes. In such circumstances, you have to wait for them to complete these slow attack animations between every hit, which, surprisingly, gets old after a while. Also, if Purple Lamp had integrated a couple more enemies, or in the very least some variants, it would have drastically improved the flow of the later worlds. From Wild West Jellyfish Fields to the 5th Wish World, we're introduced to 2 new baddies for each level. However, for the final 3 worlds, there's only 2 altogether, with the last being relegated to a single appearance within the entire story. In turn, bouts with these lumps become increasingly easier and slightly repetitive towards the end, since the only solution for amping up the difficulty is to regurgitate the same 9 baddies in different formations in greater numbers. And, of course, the nearly identical design scheme doesn't help to make any of these individual members all the more distinguishable. Still, since the combat is smooth and engaging, this never escalates into any colossal problems. Compared to most SpongeBob games, the Jellies are, in the very least, performing more than the bare minimum. So, congratulations, Purple Lamp. The Jellies are exemplary by default. Outside of jumping around and whacking aliens, what other kooky scenarios does the Cosmic Shake have in store for players? Well, remember how I mentioned that certain gimmicks weren't exactly my cup of tea? Those encompass the jumbled assortment of random activities filling in the gaps of your adventure. To preface, none of these following elements are game breakers or even necessarily low grade, and since they do contribute to that satisfying sense of complexity found within each Wish World, I'd never petition for any of their removals. That said, taken on their own individual merits, these remaining features are somewhat mundane. As you progress, there's isolated minigames and puzzles that pop up, such as when you have to best Sandy in a cactus soda drinking duel. How many euphemisms for alcohol has this been for SpongeBob now? Although they do enhance the world building and aren't annoying by any means, it's bizarre how painfully easy these missions often are. Though I can understand why Purple Lamp potentially created them this way. Who in their right mind wants to struggle replicating a shanty so Patrick can flirt with a mermaid? The floaty freak? But due to their ease, they come across as feeling obsolete at the end of the day. Similar to the slides. Perhaps the absence of an electric guitar bursting my eardrums allowed me to actually focus on the tracks for once. The slides are mediocre. Really, they're nothing to write home about. Compared to Heavy Iron's games, there's a significant drop in difficulty, and the linear layouts leave much to be desired. The only consistent threat you ever face are those insufferable Slamvilles raining down stone tikis from off-screen. However, many of these can simply be outraced before they even have the chance to target you, so there goes that challenge. Once our yellow Chatterbox and pink Windbag have finally reached their destination within each Wish World, they must surpass one final challenge. Whether through an action-packed mission or boss battle, the Cosmic Shake reliably provides compelling, thematic climaxes to its levels, even if that's the only thing they have going for them. The activity-based endings are clearly carried by their cinematic nature, with some, namely one, succeeding where the others falter. For comparison, you have the high-stakes train chase sequence, which encompasses multiple phases and integrates a healthy dose of platforming along with combat. Pretty great stuff. Then there's Prawn, where you're smacking the exact same blobs over and over again while he demonstrates his atrocious aiming skills. From a gameplay perspective, none of these are terrible, but given the depth many of the traditional boss fights have in the Cosmic Shake, and how those purple punks have already invaded every single level and boss fight, it's a shame the Admiral couldn't go down in glory. For the actual boss fights, I won't be going into any specifics here, those will be saved for the spoiler section of the review. But generally speaking, the bosses are very rewarding, definitely on par with Rehydrated's. So overall, the Cosmic Shake is a daring little 3D platformer encumbered by a few minor flaws. The WishWorlds layouts are undoubtedly its greatest assets, and SpongeBob's controls, as well as his diverse movesets, make completing the level's missions incredibly satisfying. On their own, some of these missions could have been further refined, and I would have greatly appreciated a higher difficulty curve towards the late game. But SpongeBob's Jelly Adventure was a constant treat to play through. That is, if you ignore the iffy side content. In case you haven't noticed, I've neglected to elaborate on the gold doubloons. And there's a very specific reason for this delay. But before proceeding any further, I do want to assert up front that from multiple perspectives, the Cosmic Shake is a well-designed collectathon. Nearly half of the doubloons are aptly distributed, and for those accessible the first time you visit each Wish World, they're generally very fun to search for. Thus, the Cosmic Shake is not some egregious excuse of a collectathon. Only part of it is. Presumably the developers were seeking a reliable way to extend the Cosmic Shake's runtime without having to create new assets, so they utilized one of the oldest tricks in the book. Good, old-fashioned, stinkin' backtracking. While these extra parkour segments and the combat zones are nice, albeit brief diversions, and the two hidden quests make for a wonderful surprise when you first encounter them, none of these are capable of eliciting the sheer bliss you experience on the main adventure. Which is fine. I wasn't really expecting anything that phenomenal here. However, there's two instances where the backtracking is a slap in the face to the player. Take the noxious use of the Grand Slam as a roadblock. Half of Pirate Goo Lagoon's doubloons require you to return after unlocking this ability, and this is what you do once you come back. Whoop. Then there's the secondary fetch quest you receive from the town's residents. Perhaps I'm nitpicking, but there had to have been a more feasible way to gather fortune cookies for the seniors at Shady Shoals than retracing your steps across the entirety of downtown. Besides hunting for Spot, every single one of these objectives have the exact same parameters set in place. Why? Still, this isn't as debilitating a trait as it might sound. I genuinely enjoyed the majority of these activities, but backtracking on a linear map is not exactly my interpretation of an ideal experience. Battle for Bikini Bottom is the superior collectathon. No competition. But regardless of these gripes, I thoroughly love how the Cosmic Shake improvised on the Battle for Bikini Bottom formula. If you're looking for dynamic level designs, pleasant platforming, and a whole lot of wacky charm, there's few better contenders this series has to offer. Though I probably should mention how it performs on the Switch hardware before recommending it. Historically, the Cosmic Shake's performance on Nintendo's hybrid console mirrors that of Rehydrated's. Both were riddled with countless issues at launch. However, the majority of these problems would be amended through a series of patches. And thank goodness for that. If later patches hadn't formed such a contrasting experience to that of my first playthrough, I'd be singing a very different tune right now. But just as anticipated, a slew of those aforementioned flaws were buffed out in the future updates. The developers even made certain modifications to the game. No longer is the bus ride from Glove World an unbelievably short 47 seconds, but now a far more convenient 3 hours. That was my biggest complaint. Still, there are some real conspicuous problems remaining in the current version. Oftentimes these are innocuous in nature, such as some visual lag being present during cutscenes or isolated instances of looping dialogue.
A few seconds later.
Sandy levitated during her boss fight one time. That was something. But really, the only thing I'd consider a continual detractor is the unreliable frame rate. The frame rates continue to stutter while in cluttered or spacious environments, occasionally freezing in the midst of combat or while surfing down slides for up to a second. So if you buy the Switch port of the Cosmic Shake, please remember to download all the patches before playing. My second and third playthroughs were on the later versions, and those were considerably smoother experiences. The fact I even stuck through it the first time is a testament not only to Purple Lamp's solid gameplay design, but equally so, their insane attention to world building.
Don't resist the Jellyverse.
Makes sense to me.
Whatever.
Contrary to the sharp uncertainty towards its gameplay, there was little to no doubt in my mind that the Cosmic Shake would fail to captivate the series' core fanbase. Any developers with the guts to tag Sweet Victory alongside their very first trailer either has the utmost confidence in their project's mettle, or is committed to soiling their own reputation. Regardless of the eventual outcome, this was a very bold move. So now that the Cosmic Shake has been out for a while and lost some of its luster, did Purple Lamp actually attain their lofty goal? Yep. Similar to their gameplay, Purple Lamp once more went above and beyond what they had intimated to players, incorporating an innovative plot that deepens the show's lore. Check. Molding unique environments with a boatload of references spread throughout? Of course. Ensuring the characters can never shut up? Yep, it's all there. Suffice to say, while platforming enthusiasts have much to glean from the Cosmic Shake, this is a pure love letter for those who bonded with the Bob. For instance, there's its near ubiquitous devotion to nostalgia. Whether it be the cosmic costumes, character interactions, or set pieces, Purple Lamp packed this game to the brim with references to the show and Battle for Bikini Bottom. Mirroring modern SpongeBob's propensity to insert callbacks at every given opportunity, their continual efforts here are unabashedly clear. However, while I believe this habit detracted from the former due to its overuse and shallow execution, it's the opposite case for the Cosmic Shake, even if the writing is shallow at times. Instead of being a crutch, the references here are tasty little tidbits on an already fully fleshed out sponge cake. Though, what's equally admirable were the developers' attempts to create original concepts. Up front, the Cosmic Shake has to be one of the most unique and engrossing storylines seen since Creature from the Krusty Krab. Having our beloved duo wandering around these strange wish worlds and interacting with their friends' doppelgangers unlocks so much potential. Purple Lamp obviously took several cues from the period-centric episodes such as Dungeons & Dragons and Pest of the West while crafting this game, even managing to reap many of the same benefits. Whether it be tracking down Sandy on a karate set or being hoodwinked by Mr. Krabs' alias, the Red-Handed Bandit, the Cosmic Shake, much like those episodes, manages to insert a sense of familiarity in these otherwise vastly different environments. And the immersiveness of the Wish Worlds are only amplified by the hero and sidekick camaraderie shared between SpongeBob and Balloon Patrick. Now, some might take issue with their non-stop chattering. Universally, the Cosmic Shake has a greater tendency to embellish itself with dialogue than any of the prior entries. However, this is all handled in a very healthy fashion. Their interactions are not only entertaining and oftentimes humorous, but their banter provides depth to the exploration itself. Not to mention the host of NPCs you can now engage with. Whether it be your Fish Number 1 or WishWorld variants of the cast, Purple Lamp did everything imaginable to ensure their project would be a noble adaptation of the show. And it certainly is. Though, in regards to its overarching anomaly of a plotline, things sort of go nowhere. Given SpongeBob stories aren't generally known for their complexity, there's nothing inherently wrong with the Cosmic Shake being this one giant spectacle held together by a relatively elementary plot. Still, I can't shake the feeling that Madame Kassandra was a sorely misplaced opportunity for Purple Lamp to go a bit deeper. Excluding the pivotal role she plays in the beginning act and its foreseeable climax, our sultry sorceress is inevitably left to the wayside, embodying that benign side character with ulterior motives. Which, if you know anything about the show and its classic villain tropes, this translates to an overtly sinister person who frequently lets slip her ambitions because our protagonist is an idiot. Except now it's drawn out for several hours. In all fairness, if there wasn't this stark contrast existing between her predictable personality and the game's usual incentive of subverting the player's expectations, Madame Kassandra would have been perfectly serviceable as a villain. Still, Miss Mysterious does have her redeemable qualities. One, she's directly responsible for all the countless amazing moments in the Cosmic Shake. Second, she relieved Plankton of the tired role of antagonist. And third, she made the French maid costume. So, all's well that ends well. Now, regarding Purple Lamp's aesthetic choices, I have nothing but sincere praise. Both their visuals and animations received massive overhauls from Rehydrated, and are in turn far easier on the eyes. The prevalent use of vibrant saturated colors really suits the cartoonish nature of these worlds, and the overall art direction is just pure eye candy at times. Levels such as Halloween Rock Bottom had me stopped dead in my tracks due to its alluring decorations and haunting ambience. These are the cutest spiders I've ever seen. And, of course, you can't forget the cosmic costumes. We're not only given a mound of fan-favorite cosmetics to freely swap between, but in many cases, Purple Lamp substituted the bubble wand for other objects, such as a shield or fishing rod, in accordance with your current getup. This is such an unnecessary detail, which perfectly describes this abomination. So, I get why Purple Lamp inserted what they've so aptly monikered as gross-ups throughout your adventure. Since these eyesores are in the cartoon, it stands to reason that this game would, of course, also feature the abhorrent things. And I hate it. Someone actually spent time drawing these old codgers gummy maw. What is wrong with humanity? Thank goodness there's no gross-up equivalents within the game's soundtrack. The tracks made specifically for the Cosmic Shake are all earworms, brilliantly reflecting the themes of the WishWorlds they accompany. Also, I have to applaud any game that goes the extra mile to incorporate multiple song variants for different scenarios. Creature from the Krusty Krab did that, and it's just as effective here. Like so many cases thus far, most of these complaints have been over rather trivial matters. That's not to imply that the Cosmic Shake is this perfect representation of how licensed games can be handled with finesse, though it does pull a convincing argument from under its sticky cap, the best of which I believe awaits players towards the very end. So, as a warning, this next segment will be covering heavy spoilers from the late game, including the final boss. So if those are topics you don't want to know about, please use the timeskips below to reach my spoiler-free conclusion. That said, let's press onward. Up to this point, I've been rather cryptic concerning the Cosmic Shake's boss fights. However, since that's no longer necessary, who would have ever guessed we'd be fighting Prehistoric Pearl? After Pee-wee Prawn's downfall, Purple Lamp really flexes their skills at creating memorable encounters. From having to evade the icy gaze of a monolith mollusk or rescuing Squidward from Pom Pom, which is such an ingenious name, the developers did a remarkable job with not only their build-ups, but the actual battle structures themselves. However, there's one boss in particular that blew my mind. And to fully comprehend the sheer lunacy of such an encounter, we first must divert our attention to the very wish world housing our menace, Jelly Glove World. What a phenomenal send-off for this roller coaster of a game. Specifically referencing attractions such as the Mitten and the Tunnel of Glove, introducing one of the most criminally underutilized power-ups in the game, the Reef Blower, meticulously forming this atmosphere that borders along the lines of wonderment and dread, and the music. It encapsulates everything this wonky wonderland represents for Spongebob in the moment. Yet all this pales in comparison to the madness that is Lord Latex himself, Glovey Glove. The fact Purple Lamp turned such a minor character who barely received any screen time in the cartoon to this full-blown nightmare-inducing psychopath that kidnaps Patrick is beyond incredible. From his heinous taunts as you progress through the twisted theme park to your fated confrontation, Glovey Glove as well as Jelly Glove World are the epitome of everything Purple Lamp sought to create. Solid gameplay, intense fan service, an air of mystery, and an exciting flow. Had this been where the Cosmic Shake closed out its story, this would have been tied with the movie game for my favorite climax of the entire series. However, as the plot would dictate, we have yet to foil Kassandra's devious machinations. So, back to Bikini Bottom. And from here on, our story somehow gets even stranger than it was before. Point in case, let's take the activity immediately foregoing the final boss. You'd likely imagine some sort of platforming gauntlet or large-scale skirmish against the enemies you fought in the past. Instead, the Cosmic Shake has once again done something unprecedented for the series, and possibly for any platformer ever past, present, or future. Role-playing as a garbage man. I'm not joking. Between the insane peak of Jelly Glove World and our long-awaited villain reveal, you are locked in a recycling minigame that's completely irrelevant to the plot. The gall of these developers. When Spongebob and Patrick have finished their dirty deeds and deliver the final portion of Cosmic Jelly to our cackling curator, they finally learn the terrible truth. Upon making their fatal mistake, King Neptune literally appears out of nowhere to deliver an exposition dump. Apparently, the mermaid tears responsible for this calamity were originally Neptune's, but were filched by Madame Kassandra. Given she lacked a pure heart, our malignant mage deceived SpongeBob into fulfilling her dastardly ambitions in her stead. Who would have guessed? Well, at least you're here to help us apprehend her. Never mind. After Squidward is forced to undergo puberty again, we're instantly warped to some unknown location within the Jellyverse to take down the mermaid and her monster. And as far as final bosses are concerned, this was okay. Jelly Squidward has some cool attack patterns, the music's fire, and we get to use the reef blower again. Those are pros. Yet the entire fight is peculiarly short and simple. After Kassandra is beaten and the day is saved, Neptune grants SpongeBob one last wish, and in true fashion, Patrick instantly drops in to sabotage things, causing the entire story to repeat itself. The end. For such an exceptional adventure, I have to say this was a rather lackluster note to end on. Neptune's abrupt entrance and following accusations could have been impactful had Patrick not read that one statement at the very start. If he hadn't said this, the entire showdown would have been a surprise for the player. Instead, only two things happen here that couldn't have been foreseen in the very first 15 minutes of gameplay. Squidward is transformed into a beast, and second, King Neptune bathes in mermaid tears. Not sure how to process that last one. Overall, the ending is completely fine, but if there's ever a sequel, I hope Purple Lamp expounds a bit more on the themes introduced here. Madame Kassandra was a neat inclusion to the cast, but was provided no backstory, nor the Jellies for that matter. And her underdevelopment inevitably led to a sea witch feigning godhood feel less intimidating than a deadpan rubber glove. Still, at the end of the day, the Cosmic Shake is a far more complex game than I ever would have speculated. While deviating from Heavy Iron's vision in pursuit of their own, Purple Lamp demonstrated that SpongeBob's creative potential is very much alive in this modern era. And as demonstrated here, it only takes the right people to make this a reality. Whether it be their level designs, controls, or platforming, the gameplay is impeccably solid all around. There's no doubt in my mind that the Cosmic Shake will be widely accepted as a cult classic sometime in the future. If not for the gameplay, then its sheer devotion to its fanbase. No other SpongeBob 3D platformer has ever been this ambitious before. And while I do think other titles still surpass this one in certain areas, Purple Lamp's project is objectively the most well-rounded. This is truly a balance of extremes. And while the Cosmic Shake might not be the perfect 3D platformer, this is without question one of the best the Square One has ever served up. And that's that. Thank you all for watching. For anyone who has any questions that weren't addressed in this review, or who would like to share their own experiences with the Cosmic Shake, please feel free to comment below. Also, if you guys have any feedback on any changes you'd like to see in the future, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, thank you all for the support. God bless and happy gaming.
That was sheer luck.
You could have at least involved me.
I know everyone would love to be eating out of a bucket right now.
Beluga!
Creepy, squishy, weirdo.
We going on a date now?
Could you stop yammering? I'm trying to concentrate.
We going on a date now?